comment, bienvenue, welcome there as David puts down his bass. And as ever, we discuss stuff that happens within modern sales, particularly stuff that perhaps you've taken for granted, stuff that you assume that you know exactly how to fight your way out that particular paper bag, or that you understand your own particular process or direction. But there may be something in what we say that may make you go, aha. If we give you an aha moment, exactly. If we give you the aha moment, then that's what we are for. That's our process here. So today we're talking about a topic that some people may find extremely familiar: fighting while fatigued. You've perhaps had a couple of knockbacks. You feel a bit punch drunk, a bit war wounded. You're dragging your heels. You're feeling a bit sore, and yet you've still got to do that grind. You've still got to do that stuff. How do you get up and do that without taking what some people call as panic actions, just throwing everything at it, doing anything in a hope that you can somehow make the grade? How do you avoid doing that, David? How do you fight while fatigued?
You go back to first principles. But I just want to share why I sort of decided we're going to talk about this, because nobody spends any time selling stuff, whether it's your job to sell, as you know, your full-time job, like you're a full-time salesperson, or you're an owner manager of business and you are ultimately responsible for selling stuff. If you spend any time doing that, you will know that there is more rejection than there is wins.
Oh, yeah. It's often termed, I mean, depending on what you're selling to what audience, but it can be anything up to 80 to 90% rejection. Depending on what
it right, it probably is. If you're doing it right, it probably is. So and it can be a little bit peaky. Yeah. Obviously, if we're doing everything right, you know, we have like a continuous flow and growth. But life isn't really like that. So, you know, people will experience the fatigue of rejection and being beat up and things not going your way. And this was a lesson really that is replicated in one of my other passions, which is self-defense. You know, long-time viewers of this show, or people that know me well, will know that I am obsessed with a self-defense system called Krav Maga. Hit me up, by the way, if you want to be invited to one of our classes. Now, I train particularly hard, that is true, but this is a self-defense system that is designed to work in real life. So we have to pressure test things. It's not just a case of knowing the moves. We have to put it into practice. And we were doing something called, I don't know if this is what other people call it, but in our club, we call it a Shark Tank exercise over the last week or so, where there'll be, you'll be stood in the middle of a ring of other students, assailants, and there'll be like 5 of them in the ring around you. And in quick succession, you'll have to fight each one. Yeah, each one of those is going to attack you one after the other randomly, and you in the middle are going to have to put up and defend yourself against each one of them, regardless of what they throw at you. It's an absolutely exhausting feat because you are fighting fresh fighters all the time. Yeah, as soon as you finish with one, the next one comes. As soon as you finish with that one, the next one comes. And the lesson in that is that your body, your spirit, always has a lot more resources left in it than your brain will allow you to believe. You know, your brain will tell you that you're ready to, you know, lay down and die long before your body runs out of its resources. So you have to fight through. And you know, I know it's sort of breakfast time for a lot of people, but you know, if you really push it to its limits, you know, it can get a bit messy. I train hard, and in one of these, we've done I think 3 in the last week, but in one of these, the first one, because I wasn't used to it I hadn't done it for a little while, to evacuate my body decided it was going to evacuate what was the contents of my stomach. Okay.
Delightful.
Luckily, there's usually a bin nearby. This isn't the first time it's happened to me, but this is what happens. Your body wants to expel anything. I don't eat before I go there. It wasn't like a lot to come up, but I'm fighting. I'm putting everything into it. I survived the 5 attackers, and then that's it. Out it came. Then I had to get ready for my next one, which was like a couple of minutes later. It's why I'm wearing my commemoratory glove, which is why I couldn't play the bass before, which is why it probably sounded a bit funny. It didn't. It was recorded music, but that's the point. That's the place where we are, and how that relates to sales is that there will be times when we all face where we have been grinding, and things aren't going our way, and we're feeling beat up, and there's been more losses than we had expected or hoped for. But of course, we still have to fight on. So how do we do that?
Well, a billion years ago, when I was a sales manager, I remember we'd had a big campaign. We were selling Cisco aftercare, I think, is what.
Okay.
So
that's the profitable stuff, isn't it?
Oh, it's absolutely. It's the only part of Cisco that is profitable, really. Software and aftercare. And we thought we were contacting a committed audience, and all it did was uncover all the dissatisfactions with Cisco. That's what it did. So you can imagine.
It's a worthwhile exercise.
Well, yeah, it is a worthwhile exercise. But can you imagine the mindset, David? We've got 27 staff, all been told you can be calling this data, which is all people who have already bought kit, who are really going to be looking forward to talking to you about how much they want you to charge them money to provide aftercare and support. When in actual fact, about 3/4 wanted to complain back about how the kit that we'd sold them wasn't what they were expecting, or was what they were expecting, but it just wasn't enough, or whatever. And what was interesting was the clever ones in the team took this as an opportunity to sit back and let them explain all their woes, took them through a different pathway so that we could then sell them extra kit with extra services on top of it, and ended up making really great sales out of it. The other ones would panic or get upset or worried and start disappearing down that dark hole, that spiral. And those are the ones who could really do with hearing these messaging, albeit.
Yeah. Well, look, those spiraling black dark holes, they're real. I mean, they are reflected. It's not just in our brains. We will earn less money, if we do not hit our targets, if we do not close those deals. So we feel it. Yeah, it's a real pain.
But I sat them all down in a room and I said, adjust your mindset. Every time somebody says, I'm really unhappy, that's an opportunity.
Yeah. It is. So there's a huge mindset thing in it. There's a real huge mindset. I actually wasn't expecting to spend so much time on the psychology of it in this call, but I suppose that's a lot because I am very, very used to it, because I do it for a living. And, I also sell my own stuff, of course. So I also suffer that kind of pain. But you're absolutely right that mindset is very, very important. When you're in the throes of that fatigue, though, it can be incredibly difficult to haul yourself out of it. If I'm in the throes of being attacked by multiple attackers, yes, there is a moment where maybe you can take a step back and sort of reset your mind, but you are still in it. You are still in that hole. So right. What do? And a lot of it comes down to things like muscle memory and things like what have you done in advance of those moments that will help you get out of it. Yeah. The mindset that I have been here before and I survived that, or the mindset that's, due to my panic, I've stopped breathing. Yeah. So that is going to fatigue me more. So it should be able to focus on, the everyday stuff, the routine, the rhythm, right? But there is something else that is, I think, far more influential than any of those, and far more practical, dare I say. It might vary for different people, but this is certainly the way I found it in teams that I've managed and in myself as well. And that is having a crutch, and that crutch is your process. Yeah, the crutch is your process. So the process that we have in sales is that sales methodology. The process of identifying opportunities, of qualifying them, of then figuring out what the solution is going to be to their problems, and then converting it into a sale. It's a very distinct process. It's a process that's very easy to write down. It's a process that's very easy to see in front of you if you use a CRM system, or if you programmed your spreadsheet correctly, or your notepad or anything like that. So it is something that is a linear process, which is good. It's step by step, and if you have that process, you're always able to go back to it. Where on earth am I? Right, I can see I've got an empty box here in my qualification thing. With that one, I haven't qualified it. Where am I? Okay, right, here is my list of opportunities, current opportunities. Okay, there's not enough in there. Fine, what do I do next? There is a process. I need to do some prospecting and some qualification. Okay, if you can do those things, you can get back on track. And the analogy in self-defense is that there are some specific things that we will practice as part of a process in order to be able to defend against attacks, even when we are on death's door and we've got blood pouring out of a wound we've just been stabbed at, and we've been puking our guts up, and we can see there's another guy ready to come and attack us. There's the technicalities of the moves that we have already learned, and at its most fundamental, the ability to be able to keep your hands up and guard your vital organs and your face, and your head. The ability to be able to execute on defenses that you have learned, probably loads of times, you've experienced many, many times, to focus on the actual tactics of where you're at the moment, right? And if you are in sales and you are facing one of these sort of fatigue moments, and fatigue can be like an understatement, you can be in mad panic. How do you get back onto track? And that is by knowing where your track is, and then you can go back to it at any time. It's very similar to where you are in the throes of a long, meandering conversation with a prospect. Some people, like us, actually like to talk and like to go off on tangents. How do you get, and you go through a meeting, I've got to get back on track. Being able to have if you have a process that's written down in front of you, or actually, emblazoned in your minds. I prefer it written down, as you know. Then you can then say, actually, where am I now? Where do I need to get back to? It's very, very similar to coming back from tangents.
I would say that when just reaching back into dim, distant memory, the biggest problem we had was when you got to a certain point and the salespeople were just expecting, almost waiting for the no. They could almost predetermined in their mind that there was going to be a no at some
point. I'm going to lose this. I'm going to lose it.
And that comes. It's like a dog on a lead that can sense that you're feeling scared, and then it feels scared in return. In the same way that your prospect will sense you giving up, or you being resigned. Put it this way,
it becomes self-fulfilling, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, that's where behaviors like that, we've all been sold to by people who just seem so desperate. Yeah.
So in some ways, what you want to do, I think, in those times, is say almost to your prospect, I hear that your pain, and I want to take it back to basic principles. Why don't you tell me what you feel you're expecting and what hasn't happened, and let me listen to everything you've got to say. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat that back to you to make sure I've got it right. And then I'm going to take it away from this conversation and come back to you, and we'll have a follow-up meeting where I'm going to explain to you, A, what can be done about the current situation, B, where the shortfalls were, and more importantly, how our approach is going to change moving forward. And that will then do one thing, I think, that every client wants, whether an existing client or a potential client. They want to feel like they're being listened to.
Well, I feel like you took the words out of my very mouth.
It's almost like I've been listening to you, David.
It is. It's amazing. It's true. So there's on the sort of the individual micro scale. So for the individual person that you're dealing with, yes, there is getting back on track, and there's been able to acknowledge the things that they are saying. Yeah, then it could be a big fat no, right? And that's what really we're talking about here. So no, you've wasted my time, not interested, right? But then for us to be able to if we're feeling at that point where we're ready to puke our guts up, okay, let me just write this down. Yeah, that's like, and actually by repeating it back word for word, it, in the individual situations we've talked about many times, it can take the heat out of it a little bit. In fact, quite a lot, right? Because you're not setting yourself as an antagonist with that person. You're setting yourself up as somebody who's perhaps on the same side. I'm just listening to you.
You're demonstrating sympathy and compassion.
Compassion, empathy, but most importantly, the listening skills. Yeah. One of the biggest complaints about any salespeople, we've talked about this many times before, is they just don't listen. You're not listening. And anybody that's heard those words, maybe not even just in sales, but in any walk of life, including personal relationships, you're just not listening.
Yeah. When I first started my sales journey, I would hear it a lot because I would be so keen to get my point across that I hadn't really been listening to what they've been saying. It was beaten out of me.
So that's on the micro scale. That is for the individual sale that you're dealing with, the opportunity that you're dealing with, and then on the sort of more macro scale, so your entire pipeline, being able to go back to your process. Okay, let's just have a look at our pipeline. Okay, I can see that opportunities is empty. I can see that there's nothing to close. So what am I going to have to do? Well, I'm going to have to get more qualification done. Yeah. So then I'm just going to have to chug through my qualification.
Right.
If you have been involved in sales for any period of time, you will have a lot of prospects, more prospects than you think you have, that you are able to qualify. All of those people that any time before 6 months ago, you tried to make an approach to, this is, which could be thousands of people that you've dealt with over the years.
Yes.
If you're new to it, you're still going to have a bunch of people. Go through that list. Find the ones you can qualify. If they weren't ready for it back then, now they might be ready for it. Yeah. If you're like almost all salespeople, you will not have done your follow-up when somebody says, I'm just not ready for it this year. Yeah. Most people do not put a tag in their calendar to say, oh, guy said next year. Yeah. So, go back to your first principles, return to your process, keep your guard up. Yeah. And take your precautions, wear your gum shield, right? But, trust in the system. The system works. It has worked for you before. Get back on track.
So to all of you out there that think that you've come to the end of the line, I guarantee you there's always some light at the end of the tunnel. Just make sure it's not an oncoming train. Until next time, get your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the stars and look after our mental health. Take care. And I look forward to speaking to you next week. Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.